Hello, good morning, I guess, still barely morning. Yeah, as Kathy said, Brendel Group has been part of the ClimateWise program for many, many years now, and we support a lot of the technical aspects of the program. So I'm here today to talk about a new tool that we launched last year, an online tool called ClimateWise that's basically designed to support the partners in all their activities related to ClimateWise, and in particular with respect to reporting those reduction projects that you're undertaking. I know a lot of you have probably used the tool before in the last 2 years, either as a beta tester or as a user last year, and so I'm going to try to keep this pretty brief, and then I'll hang around and be available to answer questions for any of the new partners who are curious about this and have not used the tool before. So as I mentioned, the ClimateWise tool is an online platform. It's a secure web interface that lets you basically manage your entire membership for ClimateWise. That includes making changes to your business information or your primary contacts for the program if you have any staff changes with respect to those people that are working on the ClimateWise program. It also allows you to monitor your level status and track your progress within the program, figure out what your next steps might be, and then finally to report those documentation pieces and the projects, the reduction projects that you're doing each year to contribute to the overall totals of the program. So the ClimateWise interface, you can access it from any web browser, and as I mentioned, it is a secure interface. It uses the City of Fort Collins secure logon system, which also supports some of the other city activities like newsletters and job postings and that kind of thing. So this is what the login screen looks like, and if you're an existing partner, you should already have a login, and that'll be the same as it was last year, same password, same username. And if you're a new partner, this is something that you should get from the ClimateWise program when you first sign up, is basically a username, which will be an email address, and a password for this interface. And once you've logged in there, you'll see, if you're paired with a ClimateWise partner, you'll see ClimateWise as the last option on your screen here, which will take you to the actual ClimateWise interface. So from this interface, you can manage your partner information. So in the upper left-hand corner there, you can edit information related to your business, your address if that changes, number of employees or square footage. We like to track those as well so we can kind of understand how many employees and how many square feet of building space the program is reaching. You can also edit the contacts that are your primary contacts for the ClimateWise program, and those are also the contacts that will have access to this interface, to this ClimateWise portal. So if you click on that Manage Contacts, you'll see basically these screens, and they give you the opportunity to edit the list of users that you have for ClimateWise. So you can basically create new users if you have other people in your organization that you want to involve in the ClimateWise, in using ClimateWise and in reporting data for ClimateWise. You can add them here. And basically you just have to create an account for them on that FC.gov interface, and then go ahead and add their email address here, and they'll be able to come right on into your secure partner interface. And I should also mention you can also delete users here too. So if you have a staff change and you want to take somebody off of your interface, you can take them out here as well. So when you do have a new user, if you create their login back here at the ClimateWise interface, and I'll go ahead and laser point it up here, but there's a little menu option here that says Need an Account. If you want to add new users, just create an account for them there, and then go to here and add their email, and they'll be paired up with your partner interface. So once you're into ClimateWise, you basically have access to all of the documentation, all of the levels reporting that you've done for the various requirements of ClimateWise. You'll see they're organized here by the different tier levels: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And under each one of those tier levels, you have the various requirements listed out. And by clicking on these, you can go in, see what the requirement is, and there'll be guidance on how to complete that requirement and upload the required documentation. And to the left here, and again, I'll laser point over here, there's a little icon by each one of these tier requirements. And what those icons represent is, if it's a little plus sign, green with a circle, that means that you haven't completed that action yet. You haven't completed that requirement. If you see a yellow check mark there, that means you've submitted documentation, and the ClimateWise administrative team, Deb and Wendy and Kathy and the Brendel Group team, are reviewing that to see if it meets the requirements for that tier level. And if you see a green check mark, that means you've completed that tier for that year. And actually, I'm going to step back one level here. Another thing you can do is go back in this interface and look at your reporting from previous years. You'll see there's tabs across the top here: 2010, 2009, 2008. So if you want to see what you submitted in previous years, for example, in terms of project reporting, you can go back and look at what you submitted in the previous years. So within each one of these tier requirements, and we're still working to update these, but basically we're trying to collapse all the guidance that you need to complete a tier requirement into this single page. So you won't necessarily have to go to the ClimateWise website. You won't necessarily have to call us to complete that tier. You can just come into here and you'll have all the guidance that you need. And that'll include what you're required to do and any alternatives if there's another path to completing that tier besides kind of the primary one. There'll be a timeline for completion and when it's due, what documentation is required, how to submit that documentation, which is generally just uploading it right here through My ClimateWise, and then the contact information for the particular member of the ClimateWise team that can answer questions about this particular tier. And so, as I said, we're still updating that guidance, but we're hoping to have basically a similar structure for all of those tier requirements, so you can expect to find kind of that same information under each one. And I'm going to go just briefly through 3 examples. One that's very typical, displaying the ClimateWise logo, the sticker in your window, and kind of that as a standard example of what My ClimateWise interface looks like. We'll also look at the meetings and seminars requirement, because that one's a little different in terms of how you interface with My ClimateWise. And finally, the project and reduction data reporting, which is I list on here because it's a little different and because it's very important. It's kind of a keystone of the whole program. So in terms of displaying your logo, the tier requirement basically looks like this. It has a guidance section that tells you what you need to do, and that's putting the sticker in your window. And then that guidance section will also tell you what kind of documentation you need to submit to demonstrate that you've met that requirement. And this could be a picture or a description of where you've posted the picture, or we're pretty flexible about it because we don't want to be pedantic. But this just will explain how you can do it. And then you can also upload the file right here. So if it is an image, you can just click select file and it'll show you an upload dialog box on your computer, and you can find a picture if that's your way of demonstrating that you've met that requirement. And then you hit submit. And when you do that, that little plus sign in the green circle will turn to a yellow check sign. And then when we've reviewed it and confirmed that you've met the requirement, it'll turn to a green check sign, and that's all you have to do. And the vast majority of the tiers kind of follow that structure in terms of how you would meet those requirements. One that is a little bit different is the attending meeting requirement. Basically what you'll find on here is the same sort of thing in terms of guidance. A list of meetings that you've already attended, and you'll find that for most of the city meetings and those other meetings that qualify for your ClimateWise tier requirement, they'll be taking attendance, and you should see that the meetings appear in here automatically. Oh, Deb's shaking her head. Something has changed since...
Actually, we have them go in and
oh, okay.
check their meetings.
I apologize, that's changed. Okay, so now we're just going to have you report your meetings, whatever you may have attended. So you can come in here and click, there's a little link right here that says let us know, and you can click there and there'll be a list of all the meetings that qualify, and you can just check the ones you've been to, and that's all you have to do to meet this requirement. And I know in the past we have sometimes accepted other meetings that aren't listed in there, so if you've attended some kind of seminar that relates to sustainability, whether it's a conference in Denver or anything else on the topic, just let us know and we can add that as well. And so the final one that I'll talk about briefly is project reporting. Every year we ask partners to voluntarily report activities they've done to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions in the previous calendar year. And just to emphasize that we are talking about reductions, not your actual baseline of emissions. So one of the gold requirements is to complete a greenhouse gas baseline tool that tells you what your emissions are in a given year, and that's what these green bars might represent. What we ask every partner to do every year to achieve bronze is to report these reduction activities that you're doing for that year. So what you're doing between any given 2 years to actually reduce your emissions. So that's kind of a keystone of the program. That's the big number that you see that we report in aggregate for all the partners every year. Over 100,000 tons of emission reduction that all the partners are contributing to the community every year. And so we're kind of proposing a 3-step process for doing that as a way to make My ClimateWise a more useful tool for the partners. The first step we see is kind of this planning process. And the idea is that you can use My ClimateWise as a way to track the projects you're planning to do in a given year. So you could go in January or through March or really any time during the year when you're planning new projects and go ahead and just enter a list of what you're planning to do. You don't have to have any of the data yet. You don't have to know what the outcomes of the projects are going to be, but just a way for you to kind of plan out what you're going to do, and kind of remember what kind of data you might want to track in order to be able to report it here later in the year. The second phase that we're proposing for My Climate Wise is you can kind of use it to report as you go. So once you've listed all your projects in the tool, as you start to collect that data over the course of the year and you start to see the outcomes of those projects, you can come in here and enter those results. And the benefit of that is that then when you come back in February or March of the next year to finalize your reporting and complete everything for your tier requirements for that year, you won't have to go back and try to remember what you did the previous January over a year ago, because you'll have already entered it into My Climate Wise. So the idea is just to kind of give you a tool to use throughout the year to track your projects. And so for entering projects, just kind of briefly, we take projects related to energy, water, solid waste, or transportation, and you'll see those tabs across the top of the screen when you go into My Climate Wise. And so basically there's a very similar form for each one. Some of the specific fields might change. For example, on energy, we ask you to tell us how many kilowatt hours or therms you saved. On water, we'd be talking about gallons of water. On solid waste, we'd be talking about pounds or tons of solid waste that you've recycled or reduced. So the forms differ a little bit, but generally the structure is that we ask you to describe your project, give it a name, and tell us just a little bit about what you did. To estimate the cost savings that you achieved through that project and what the installed cost was for implementing the project. To tell us a little bit about the performance of the project, how many kilowatt hours did it save, how many therms did it save, gallons of water saved, and so on. And then if you're having trouble estimating those numbers, that's also something the ClimateWise staff can do. So under this description box up here, if you don't know any of these subsequent numbers, just tell us what you know about the project and we can work with you to try to estimate those benefits. And then the last thing that you'll see on basically all of these forms is some questions about how it relates to other programs. We want to make sure that we're not double counting the benefit of a project that you do and report to ClimateWise with any of the programs that utilities has in terms of rebates, any of the other transit programs regionally like the transport programs or VanGo or any of those. So we just ask you to tell us if you're also doing this project through another program so we can make sure not to double count the benefits. And so just to kind of briefly illustrate this three-step process then, what our hope is that you can use My ClimateWise to kind of outline the projects you're planning to do in a given year and just to basically list them. You can go in and create the projects in those forms and not enter any of the data if you don't have it yet. Then you have a list of projects to work from over the course of a year that'll help you track them and remember what you'd planned to do. And then as you go and as you collect data on those projects, you can come back in and you can use this little blue pencil that's by any one of the project line items to go in and edit that project. So you can go in and edit it and start entering the data that you may have collected during the course of the year. And then finally, when you come back in January, February, March of the following year to finally submit this and complete your tiers requirements for the year, it'll basically be done. You can double check it, make sure you checked off all the projects that you had planned for the year. And then you just hit this little submit button that the red arrow is highlighting, and that'll give you the yellow check, and then we know to come in and look at it and confirm that you've actually submitted projects that we can use. And we'll be in touch if we have any questions or if there's any where you've just entered some description but no actual numbers, we'll be in touch to kind of clarify those with you and try to work to quantify them. So what's next from here? First off, to confirm that you have a working login. So even if you're an existing partner who's not new this year and you've used My ClimateWise before, it'd be a good thing to get in and check and make sure you still have access. You can give us a call at ClimateWise if you have any trouble getting in. You can start using My ClimateWise today to update your documentation for any of the tier requirements, and in particular to start project reporting. If you have a list of projects you've been working on, it's not too soon to start putting them in. It'll save you time next year and it'll make it easier for everybody. And then completing reporting and submitting those projects by usually the end of February, and that'll be 2011. So that's coming up pretty fast. Thanks a lot.